All right. In that case, welcome, everybody. How are you all doing? I have the fortune and misfortune of being Joe Pasculo, one of the wire librarians here at the 53rd Street Library in Midtown Manhattan. And I'm happy to introduce this program today. This is one of three of a series that we're kind of doing here with Image Comics. This is Comic Creators Talk. Today's theme is True to Yourself. And we've got a nice panel of guests here today. Steve Orlando is here. We've got Allison Sampson, and we've also got Kyle Starks. We're going to introduce them just a little bit. But first, we want to do a thank you to everyone who's in attendance today. You guys could be doing anything, but you are here a week before Comic-Con. It's almost here for this virtual author talk event. So thank you all so much for supporting the library and being here. We are going to have a little bit of Q&A. I'm going to be one of the people monitoring the chat along with Tabrija and Whitney. They are here as well. They're really more the point person. I'm just kind of the sidekick. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, use the Q&A box. I'm going to tell you about that on the next slide. We're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. But if we don't get to them, we do apologize. All right. Next slide here should be telling you guys about general policy and rules. I don't know if I can see the slides on my end.
No. We can briefly introduce ourselves. So
Sure.
we have Joe who is doing the introduction. My name is Tabrija Jones. I am the young adult librarian at the Pelham Parkway Van Ness branch.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Whitney Davidson Rhodes. I am the Associate Manager for Young Adult Programs and Services here at NYPL, or the New York Public Library. And thank you all for coming.
Amazing. All right. So just a couple of housekeeping things. Zoom is easy to use. I'm sure by now we've all been kind of using it, but just some general things: prevent any ambient noise. Please silence your microphones. If you are not speaking, you can do that by using the cursor at the bottom of the screen where you're going to see a lot of icons. One of them is a microphone, so that'll mute and unmute. There's a phone icon. You can use that to leave the call altogether. A camera, which will, you want to be seen. Please turn it on. If not, that's okay. We have the live transcript is already turned on. You can also turn on captions by clicking the button that says CC at the bottom of the screen. And so familiarize with those. And we're going to tell you a little bit about how to get books here in the NYPL. Most of the locations are open by now. We're 3 years in to, COVID-19. Just a couple of branches that are not open because they're undergoing improvements and renovations. But yeah, we're pretty much back to full service, general library use, seating, browsing, laptop, and computer access. Please visit our website, nypl.org, to learn more. And there is a link that's going to be entered into the chat. You could find the NYPL branch that is closest to you. We prefer if you have a physical library card, but if you don't feel comfortable, you are able to use our Simply E app. That is the gray, blue, green E on the slide, and that's available to download on Apple and Android for free. With your library card, you can make a request to place a book on hold before you visit a branch. If you're using the app, you can place a digital hold for an ebook or e-audiobook. And another thing that's a couple of years old now, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary where all late fines were completely eliminated, a totally different policy shift that the NYPL implemented to welcome people back to the library. So nobody should have any existing fines or fees for quite some time now. Tabrija is going to put the link there in the chat where you can see more about that. Everyone's got a clean slate. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and I know we want to get to the comic stuff. That's the fun stuff. So if you have any questions, you can do one of two things. You can call Ask NYPL at 917-ASK-NYPL, or you can also send an email to gethelp@nypl.org. And you can also call our branches. I'll be here. You can talk to me on the phone, call me maybe. A couple of other things. Banned Books Week is right now. We're going to talk a little bit about that with some of our comics guests today. So link is dropped in the chat there. The library is very dedicated to free and open access to information and knowledge. So find out about what the library is doing for Banned Books Week at the link right there. And we've got a couple of upcoming programs that we wanted to specifically highlight that have to do with comics and other creators. So let's take a look at those on the slide. And some of them are virtual, some of them are in person. definitely just want to give a plug to our programs. Please support the library. But that's it for me for now. I'll come back later to ask some of the questions. I am going to turn it over to my friends, Sabrina and Whitney. Go for it.
Joe, and hi everyone again. So we are here to introduce our special guest today for the Comic Creators Talk panel discussion, True to Yourself. And we have a great selection of panelists that are so happy to introduce: Steve Orlando, Kyle Starks, and Allison Sampson. So to Steve, Kyle, and Allison, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So
I speak for everybody.
So I want to give a bio for each of our panelists. So Steve Orlando's first book ever was a poorly drawn in 5th grade classroom pencils on Xerox paper and featured a doughboy with superpowers and names changed for trademark purposes. He was a precocious child. So today he writes and produces comics including Virgil, Prude, and stories in the Eisner Award nominated Outlaw territory on Image Comics. He launched Midnighter and took part in Batman and Robin Eternal and CMYK Yellow at DC Entertainment. You can find him at your convenience deep down the rabbit hole of discussing wine, spirits, or mythology. And then we have Allison Sampson, who is an award-winning London-based artist. Her work for Image Comics includes contributions to the 2023 Eisner-nominated Department of Truth with other fellow Image Comics writer James Tynion IV, Hit Girl India with Peter Milligan, and co-creating Winnebago Graveyard with Steve Niles' graphic novella Genesis, as well as a range of covers and graphics such acclaimed series as The Wicked plus the Divine, Love Everlasting, Echolands, All Against All, and more. Elsewhere, her work can be found in the fields of horror, Hellboy for Dark Horse, and Werewolf by Night for Marvel Comics, fantasy, which is Sleeping Beauties, Volumes 1 and 2 for IDW, written with Stephen and Owen King, and in the 2023 multi-Eisner-nominated Little Earthquakes anthology with Tori Amos for Z2, which is also her writing debut. And then we have Kyle Starks, who is the Eisner-nominated creator of Sex Castle, which was recently optioned to be made into a major.
This bio is so old. Can I do it? Sabrina,
Yes,
can
you
I do
can.
it?
Yes, you
Because
can.
I saw that option. I saw that bio and I was like, that's my bio from like 2018. And it's 2023 now, which is fine. I'm a 3-time Eisner nominee. Most recently for Skybound's I Hate This Place. I'm currently doing Peacemaker for DC, amongst the other things. And I'm probably best known for doing, for better or worse, the Rick and Morty series for about 5 years. That's my bio.
Okay,
The one you were like is like, I had different religions then. I think I had a third arm. It was from so long ago.
That's perfectly fine. We want to make sure that we have it accurate. So, okay. So with our panel's like illustrious writing and illustrating career, we have amazing, great questions. But we did want to ask each of you if you could discuss first, like, what is your most recent title or body of work, and if you could give us a brief synopsis of that work.
Who wants to go first? Me?
I'll go first.
Steve says me. Go ahead, Allison.
Okay. Shall I go first?
Yes.
Okay, so I've been quite busy with a lot of book covers lately, and I've done this project, the Department of Truth, which is what's been just been mentioned, which is what if conspiracy theories are true. But the main long form thing I've done is this adaptation of Stephen and Owen King's massively fat novel, Sleeping Beauties. And what that is about is the premise of the book is, what if all the women went away? A horror story, or not. And we knocked around about 700 pages of dialogue down to about 200 and something pages of graphic novel. It's actually in two graphic novels. It's a huge piece of work. And it's a really, really weird book. It starts off as a horror book, and it, like most King books, or many King books, it turns into something else. So it starts off as a horror, and the book it's most like is The Stand. So what we did, I think there's a lot of people out there who would like to read Stephen King and maybe can't address, a novel that is this thick, which it is. I looked at that and I was like, oh my God, it's so long, so much. And this makes King accessible to people. And I think it's really important. I talked to quite a lot of people about the book, and I think, not everybody is 400 or 700 page prose book, and they should be able to find a story in another way. And this is it. This is that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I like making things accessible.
I'm Kyle Starks. That was very nice, Allison. It was lovely. I'm Kyle Starks. I currently have a bunch of things wrapping up. The last issue of Peacemaker for DC, Peacemaker Tries Hard for DC Black Label, just dropped. I'm currently doing Marvel Unleashed, which is AKA the Pet Avengers for Marvel. And this week, the collected volumes of my Dark Horse horror novel about a gated community for slasher villains called Where Monsters Lie came out. And the second part of my second and final trade for I Hate This Place, which I mentioned earlier, was Eisner nominated, no big deal. Came out this week. That's from Skybound, which is about a gay couple who inherits the worst, most haunted, wretched place on earth, and they can't escape.
As a new homeowner, I totally relate to that. So what am I doing? A lot. It's almost adorable that we said your current work.
I know.
For better or worse, when you're in comics, I have to write 7 books a month to break even. So I got to think. Well, I'm currently working on the Scarlet Witch at Marvel, along with Astonishing Iceman and X-Men Unlimited and Spider-Man 2099. I am out right now. Just on stands is the collected edition of Bulls of Beacon Hill, my most recent work from Aftershock before they fell into the Phantom Zone last year, but a book I'm very proud of. For folks, Virgil came up in my bio. Bulls of Beacon Hill is very much a spiritual sequel to that. Not a literal one, but a spiritual one. I am currently releasing with Joe Poda a book called Sainted Love at Vault Comics. That is an extremely not safe for work queer action time travel adventure that is certainly in the erotica genre as well. We're going to many different times and fighting many people and having sex with them too. So that's coming out right now. It's kind of like the porn version of Doctor Who, like people time travel, but then you learn things and want to meet people. Like original William Hartnell Doctor Who, but with porn. So that's coming out. And what else is going on? There's a lot. And the big thing is that in November 8th, my book that I've been working on for the past 5 years, since 2018, Feeding Dangerously, a book I wrote with Jose Andres, who's regularly, up for Humanitarian of the Year and the Nobel Peace Prize. He's the man feeding the world after natural disasters. We've been working on a book with Alberto Ponticelli since 2018. Once again, Feeding Dangerously with TKO Studios, and that is finally coming out. Easily the longest term project I've ever been part of, and one for which I personally went and did disaster relief myself. So if there's a big thing going on right now, it's certainly that. And I'm sure I'm forgetting things because as we were saying, it's a hustle life in this business, but that should be enough to spurn conversation.
With you guys being so busy, we're more than appreciative that you guys are here. So we're gonna start off this, but it's gonna be an amazing conversation. So true to yourself, that is our name of our panel for today. And the reason why we title that is because we're coming towards the end of Banned Books Week. However, banned books and censorship with reading, it is becoming a problematic issue around the world. And we wanted to ask you, like, with this being Banned Books Week, how do authors and artists try to keep true to their style while creating their work?
I mean, I can just say, like, as someone who just did that whole spiel about sainted love, I don't, in the context of of banned books and will this piss people off, you kind of can't care, and to be quite honest, you can't ban books. You can ban books in schools or things like that, but genderqueer is a bestseller. So I mean, you can't. Certainly it's wrong, and that's why we're here talking about it today, but you can't consider those things. And from my point of view, when you're going out to do something creative, you have to tell the authentic story you want to tell. And in my opinion as well, you just can't. It's not just that you can't worry about that. Like, if you're not getting a reaction from somebody, then what you're doing is probably so vanilla that it's kind of meaningless anyway. And that's not to say you should go out and court controversy, right? Like, that's some edgelord bullshit. But if you're not doing something that's true and real, yeah, you probably won't get anyone having any strong opinion on it. But to be clear, that's also another way of saying that nobody's feeling anything when they encounter your work. So it's perhaps a cop-out answer, but like you have to tell the story you want to tell, not the story you and your collaborators, of course, but you can't tell the story as a team that you think folks, any specific demographic is going to want. You can't tell a story, oh, well, this is going to enrage people, this might ruffle some feathers. That just can't be how you set out to do what you want to do, because you're already putting like a choke chain on your own expression. And our job as creators is to say what we think about a given topic. It's to give our lens on the world. And I think that it's that has to be your one and only priority. Now, of course, there is a second priority if you are working on licensed work, but it's not, because you don't own the characters. So it's not as though, well, I'm going to do a story where all Wonder Woman does is go to the head shop, no, you can't do that. You can't do that because you don't own those characters. But at the same time, you are being hired for those gigs because people want your perspective and your take on those characters. So it's not that it's a different thing. There are certain rules, but in that scenario, you are the people who quote unquote set the rules are the people that are hiring you, and that's just part of the job. You still have to tell a story that is your story. You still have to tell your Wonder Woman story to carry that along, that motif along. But of course, knowing that, because you don't own that character, there's going to be guardrails. I was on Wonder Woman for 3 years, and yeah, you knew out of the gate, if I sent them a pitch that was just Wonder Woman is ripping a bong and then going on a mass murder spree, then we're probably not going to get approval, But that's just not what a Wonder Woman story is either. So part of that comes to, when you're doing an original, you have to do what is true to you and true to your characters. And the only real difference is that on licensed work, part of your job is understanding what the core of a character is, because you didn't create it.
I think it's good that Steve answered that question so good that this entire conversation's over.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm glad we did it in 20 minutes.
So you have nothing to add?
No, I mean that's the truth of it. The only thing I would add, because he's absolutely right, is that my only caveat, because I'm not telling a story that I think innately would ever offend anybody per se. I say that is I do take into account that multiple people will be reading my story, and I do want accessibility, but and I don't want to jump ahead because there's a question later which I would respond here to later, which makes it hard. But I mean, there are situations where, say, and I'll just go and jump. Like, say I have a villain he's villainous and he behaves in a certain way because he's a villain. Do you want to, like, what's the line where it's just offensive and it's not just villainous? In fact, I did a book called The Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton for Skybound, and it's about the worst human on earth, who's an actor who dies, and sort of his traumatized sidekicks from each show sort of band together to solve it. And the discussion was at one point is how far is just unnecessarily too far, right? Because you don't want to just to offend someone for the sake of offending anyone, or accidentally offend someone in a way that isn't necessary to the story. So what I agree, like the story is the story, the characters are the characters, but I do think you're like, well, you know, what's maybe inappropriate is something that I consider just because I want accessibility to so many readers and so many people.
Well, I think Kyle, you bring up an interesting point. Like, telling the story you want to tell is different than ignoring the responsibility we have as a storyteller. And I feel like that is different. It's actually not hard to define, you know, like, yes, you need to tell the story you want to tell. And if you're talking about things that you aren't someone who's lived through or experienced, then there's added weight and responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so, but that's not the same thing, right?
Right.
You know, that's not, this is banned. This is okay. If I'm going to talk about a culture or something that I don't personally know, there's more work. That's part of the responsibility of being a creator. But I don't I consider that tertiary, like
no, you're right. No, you're right. I wasn't implying that. I was just saying, like, I was adding.
Oh, for sure. It just sparks something in my mind, because
Yeah.
I'm here being like, tell the story you want to tell. Well, yeah, but if the story you want to tell, and I'm just trying to think of absurd things.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst.
The story you want
thing.
to tell is like Hitler comes back from the dead and like fist fucks Jesus.
Yeah.
Like you can. I mean, you know, maybe consider his worth to that. And,
right.
You know, but and your own perspective. And how it relates to that, but that's different than telling a vital story that is authentic.
Right.
People getting angry because it is authentic. Look, I mean, I've been in 10 years in Big Two Comics, and for some people, the mere acknowledgement that Black people and women exist is offensive. But that doesn't mean they're right. Fuck them. So
yes.
But that's different, of course.
Which comes to the point I was going to make, which is existing as a woman, I'm offensive already for some people. And I mean, that's just a thing. It's something I'm kind of aware of, working in comics, where if you look at lists of people who make comics, there are, I don't know if it's increasingly less women, there are just not many women. And it's clear, well, I know this, that women get various kinds of what I would call a hard time.
Sure.
In some of the mainstream areas, which I don't really want to go to because I don't enjoy that stuff. But talking about being true to yourself, it is a choice. Say, for example, when I drew Hit Girl India, and even just as an artist, I wasn't writing that. Peter Milligan, who's kind of great, was writing it. I did have a choice on how I did it. Living in the UK, there's lots and lots of Indian people here, many. I can't remember the percentage of the population. And I was very, very keen that people I wanted people in India to like the book. I didn't want to do what you would call a colonialist take, which is really, really easy to do, particularly if you're a white person. And it took quite a lot to not do that. And I don't think I did, but it was absolutely, definitely a choice, and it cost me. The readership of that line of books likes a colonialist take. And
well, I was going to say, like, that IP, not Peter, but that IP is created by the king of the edgelords that loves to piss people off and do things that he probably shouldn't do. So
and absolutely, and it was very much not his thing. And well, I mean, who knows? He paid me well anyway. But like,
sure.
Who knows? But it was a choice, and I have had backlash on it. You know, people think it's boring. Presumably, I'm not killing enough brown people. Whatever. I don't know, but it's absolutely a choice. You can choose to draw things in such a way and not other things, and you can do things like researching properly on what places are like and what people wear, and talking to actual people from that place. There's a whole load of stuff, but kind of we have many more choices, I think, than people think. and we have to sometimes consciously make those.
Gave such great answers. Like, you guys, that was just wonderful. Thank you. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with Kyle. We might have just ended this panel at 20 minutes, but no, we have still some great questions. So I think you guys did touch a little bit based on it, but if you wanted to explore a little bit more, what would your response be if your book or your artwork was banned or challenged in any form? It could be in like school libraries, public libraries, or just something just causes an uproar over it.
Steve, sure, I'm speculating, but surely you've gotten with the big. I'm just new to Big Two, so they still like me. But you've been doing it for a while. I'm sure you've gotten a ton of awful Twitter responses, right?
Well, it's different than a ban, you know, but or a challenge. Like, you know, I feel like we need to delineate. You're right, of course, but we need.
I mean, what I'm saying is that you've had a sense of backlash, unwarranted, ridiculous backlash, right?
Yeah, you know, but it is often, well, you know, I don't want to divert the conversation too much. You know, honestly, like the most backlash I've ever gotten has not been about you know, representation or speaking about diverse peoples. It's been about who can beat who, and
yeah,
like,
sure.
I mean, like the death threats I've gotten have not been because I put queer characters in my books. It's because I refuse to write a Scarlet Witch that is unbeatable. And for that I'm told, you know, that I should have my hands cut off. And that is a very common thing in comics now. You know, but that's a whole different discussion. Those are folks who, all I will say on that is that comics fans are wonderful. Comic stands are can be problematic, but it's almost as if they forget that stan is a portmanteau of stalker fan, and comes from an Eminem song about a mentally unstable fan of his. So yes, I get pushback, but it's very rarely. And you know, the thing is that like when it is about like diversifying a book or things like that, people are really also just telling on themselves because they don't even read the books. They're usually recaps or things like that. The best example is, and I'm lucky that it's mostly been public facing. I've never, there's been one time in the past 10 years where I've had stuff challenged internally at a company. And you know, I think that is because I've been in for 10 years, but I've been around the industry and learning it for almost, well, I'm 38 now, so almost 28 years. And I've learned how to sort of talk about these things in a way that it works internally. But externally, you know, I did an issue of Wonder Woman where she goes, where Maxima is in it, and Maxima is a lesbian. But before they relaunched, Maxima was not a lesbian. In the 90s, her whole thing was she just wanted to find the most powerful man and mate with him. I did not write this character. That's what it was. And, you know, I did this book where Maxima is a lesbian, and, you know, she has to go back to her planet and fight to reveal the true history, because you find out that basically their entire history has been straight washed. And their whole like heterosexual society is based on a lie. But of course there were people, oh, you made Maxima a lesbian, you ruined her, all these things. I mean, in that case, the reality was I didn't make Maxima a lesbian for what it's worth. Scott Lobdell did. But nobody read that book. And you know, so like most of the times they are kind of telling on themselves. You know, there's a lot of things that, like, you know, but that's the fact-free point of view that these folks have. You cannot read something, but then you can make a giant leap. So it happens, you know, but if anything, and I'm already talking too long about this.
I distracted you. It's my fault. I tangented you.
No, but the real challenge is the power dynamic, you know, like if it's actually harder, I think, being the adult in the room as a creator. Like if someone comes at me on Twitter and is like, well, fuck you, buddy, you know, I mean, because you made Vixen the leader of the Justice League. There's a good example. You know, in real life, I can say
she's been leader before.
Like in real life, I can say fuck you back, and you know, and I can tell them where to put that. But in the social media sphere, it can intensify, because people take advantage of the dynamic. You know, if someone with 5 followers calls me some sort of invective about being Jewish or queer, I just have to ignore them, A, or B, be like, interesting point, you know, because I have X amount of followers, you know, more than him. And if I actually respond as I would, suddenly I'm sicking my followers on him. And then, you know, when you do try to be an adult about it, they'll say, oh, go cry more. But again, it's not go cry more. It's that you're a little baby with no rules that don't have to follow anything. And we have to be the adults in the room. So it's actually more challenging in the social media sphere and the digital sphere because of that than it is in person, where people have to act like human beings, because it's much easier to say something with no repercussions than to say something when you actually have to be a creator. So it happens, but look, I'm also very lucky, and this is like what I'll toss over to other people for. Like, yes, people have threatened to cut my hands off. Yes, people have said they're going to find me. Yes, people have threatened to kill me and find my family. But were I to be a female creator, were I to be a female creator of color, God forbid a trans creator of color, this would not be a monthly occurrence. It would be
hourly,
a weekly or daily occurrence. So while I have dealt with it for sure, it is a drop in the bucket compared to what some of our peers face.
I feel like it's my fault that
is true. That is true. I was going to say, in terms of answering the question, I generally think it's if somebody chose to ban a book of mine, which I'm not aware of, because say, for example, I think in the US you can find out if books are banned. Our problem here is our media. We have different free speech laws here, and our media is rubbish, frankly, at the moment, and it's very much been taken over by the right wing, a lot of it, and which means that, firstly, going back to the basics, if you had a book banned, you're probably not going to know. You're not only not going to know if the book is banned, but if you can't know what you don't know. If you don't know the book exists, you don't know it's banned. That's kind of where we are. There is. I talked to a librarian yesterday in preparation for this conversation, and I was like, "Are books banned here?" And they were like, "We don't know."
Alison would never have a reaction.
What?
She would have no reaction to this question. She would never know it happened.
Yeah. Well, quite. But imminently, in how long? In mid-November, there is a book coming out called "Won't Back Down," which is Trina Robbins, the American historian, and we've made an anthology about loads of us. I don't know if either of you two are in it, in aid of Planned Parenthood, and it's been published by Last Gasp, which, as you probably know, is an activist publisher, and it's about abortion and people having abortions, and in my case of the story I've done, something that happened in this country that somebody did that was illegal, which I was told about, but I don't know if it actually happened. And I talked to the publisher briefly yesterday, and I said, I'm going to be on this conversation about banned books, and I would imagine that this book is going to receive challenges. And they were like, yeah, it will. And so that is something that it's going to be in shops in January. This is something we're going to experience in real time, because this book it's absolutely in your face about abortion. There's no like going around. It's called Won't Back Down, and the publisher is Last Gasp. It's crowdfunded, and it will come into shops, I think, in January. I mean, I'll have it in my hands in November, and that will be, if you want to know what happens when a book is banned, that one is going to be, kind of all the story, because it's like that is a reaction to states making decisions about what laws they want to have, and it's been made because the people who made it, who are virtually all from the US, thought that the subject matter was important, and it's called Won't Back Down because it's about people making their own choices. And I think that is the crux of all of this, that this is about people making their own choices. Something the librarian said to me yesterday, I was like, if a book was banned, would you object to that? And they said, that's not how we work. What we try and be is we provide things for everybody. We try to be as even-handed as possible. And if we provide one point of view, we want to provide the other point of view. And it's about giving people, if people want books, we get the books. And so if people choose to ban the books, I don't think, you know, they can try and do that. But what this is all about, and going back to what Steve said as well, it's about what people want to read. If people want to read a book, they should have a book. Books are.
Well, the interesting thing that Allison's saying, and I'm now going to take control of this and ask the librarians running it. So she brought up a good point. Like, if people, this push, and Allison, you may or may not know this stuff in the UK, but you know, we've reached kind of an absurd point in certain parts of the country here with we need to give a different point of view on everything. I'm talking about the Florida curriculum. So is there a limit to, if people want a book, they get a book, where you have things like, now we have to both sides of the Holocaust in the Florida curriculum, which is a real thing if you didn't know, Allison.
Shocking.
So like I'm actually interested in the librarian perspective when you see, which, you know, I'm not a librarian, so I can say that sounds like absolute horseshit. What do we do with that? You know, like me, as someone who probably wouldn't be here if the Nazis won, of course, being a Jew, I'm like, well, we don't need to both sides of that. There's kind of only one side. And yet this is obviously a growing movement, be it wrong-headed, to say the least. Like, how do we deal with perspectives like that?
They're scared to answer, Steve, and I don't blame them.
No, we got it. Well, you have
no. There is an answer, and there's an answer that, and I think it's a good answer and it's an answer that's a diplomatic answer that both sides won't like. That we like. So the New York Public Library stance is that we don't censor any information, regardless of like whatever side you are on. We don't censor anything. And we have it's our jobs is like to provide access to everything, and I think it's just like to give, and that is a stance like a lot of, well, I would say, like, I know the American Libraries Association, that is their stance, like to make sure that have access to everything, so people can have different point of views. And there's like an argument, and like and there I've seen some books on my shelf, and I'm like, how could anyone read this? But if a patron comes up to me and saying they want to look this up and they want to check it out, I'm like, okay, here you go, because they have just as much as like I have a right to read a book that features a person of color or an LGBTQ couple. They have that right to read the information that I feel like is abhorrent and disgusting.
Well, so here's the question. I actually have no problem with that answer. My question is, where is that book in the library? And is it in the fiction? Well, no, of course, but is it in the fiction or nonfiction section? I'm not making a joke. Like, I mean, is it in an opinion section or is it in a history section? I actually have no problem with that answer, but my question is, where do these types of things go? And are they presented as factual, or are they presented as, you know, someone's fancy? I don't know. That's not a section, but you know what I mean.
That is a good question. And I think it's because it determines on how the library catalogs their books, because we have the Library of Congress cataloging system and the Dewey Decimal System. And I guess it's determined on where that book is put into the American cataloging system. So it could be some, for if it's like an opinionated book, most of the time I see it in social sciences because it's based on opinion. But if it's based on fact, like historical fact, it would be based in history. That would be in the 900s. But
how do you guys feel about the something fancy section, somebody's fancy section, though? I think that's a good idea. Is just somebody's fan. You'd have like unicorns playing in clouds, and then like incorrect takes on the Holocaust. I think there's something. Just to answer that last question.
You know, Kyle, one really leads to the other.
How would No, I know. I think what's a fancy what's another fancy? They're not the same.
Cat Fancy. It's the name
Cats.
of the magazine.
Yeah,
Thanks.
the Cat Fancy would be there. Is if someone banned one of my books, I would be very surprised because I wouldn't understand how that would happen. And then it would be the book I promoted the hardest, probably for the rest of my life. It'd be my favorite book to promote.
This is already turning into like
Somebody's
an
fancy.
amazing. Somebody's fancy.
Steve, are you gonna be in New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see you. I'm gonna shake your hand, my friend. I'm very. When I was invited to be on this, I'm like, oh, good. It's always nice to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I'm glad that that's been made clear today.
It's usually my gimmick, though, so I don't know what to tell you.
To be the dumbest guy in the room?
Yes, I mean,
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second.
I mean, just to cut in here, fairy tales are technically nonfiction in the library. They're in the the 390s. So if you are looking for space unicorns and some folklore mixed in, it'd be in that section. But like Tabrija said, social sciences is kind of, what is that, the 200s? And then like 300s.
Like, yeah.
Right before the fairy tales.
there you go.
Interesting order.
And self-help is in the 200s, which is kind of where the Bible is as well.
Oh, there you go.
Well, you really went there. I was going to ask where it is, but I was like, no, that's just that's just a firebrand question. But here we are.
Interesting.
So, because we have some more questions, so we definitely want to try to get to.
Sure.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to pass it over to Whitney. Could you, let me see, sorry. So I think you really touched base on it. Like, why do you think it's important that books reflect real life experiences and events? Because a lot of your books, whether they take place in the fantasy and the supernatural world, they do contain some aspects of how society is made up. So why is it so important that real life experiences are reflected in creative work?
Because there's people out there who feel invisible or don't feel understood, or sometimes can't leave. Take a good example, trans people in the UK. Who can't leave their houses because of hate speech or homophobia or whatever. And to recognise, say, for example, when we made Sleeping Beauties, the novel of Sleeping Beauties was about a gender binary, quite notoriously, which is a lot of people either do or don't like it for that reason. And then the graphic novel, we got Stephen King to revise it. And it's not about a gender binary. And this is really important to trans people. It was really important for us to make it that way, that this is Stephen King walking the walk. This is a really, really big deal to trans people and non-binary people, that he says, yes, this is how it is. This is, if you make something like that, and it's somebody, and particularly when we're doing an adaptation of somebody who's a much bigger author, and we're just conveying his message more or less. This is a really big deal to people, to be seen, to be seen for who they are, and to be understood. Because our government won't do that. People in the UK, the media is not particularly pro-trans. We're kind of worse off than I think where you are, even, if you can believe it. And I've had people say to me, there's actually quite a lot of trans people in the book, because it's a show as well as a tell. And I've had people say, this is important, that, we feel seen. And I think whatever it is, and I think, is it Charlie Kaufman said, that people don't think they're interesting, but what people, are like and what they know, that's really all they have. That's what you should be telling your stories about, because that's what people understand. And I just think it's really, really important to just not leave people behind in this manner. It's quite, I feel quite emotional about it. Anyway.
No, I mean, Allison's answer is perfect. You know, it's people, you know, we as a species learn by example. Our first examples, of course, are our parents. And after that, it's our, you know, it's our extended family. And after that, it's our community. That being said, it's highly subjective, what those places look like. So I think that, as she said very well, it is people need to feel that they, being seen is a clean, way of saying that they want to have their humanity validated, their personhood validated. And I do think that there's a tertiary example or a secondary effect too. I mean, yes, first of all, it's important because everybody deserves to be the hero of a story. And to be shown that they matter and that their existence is validated. I also think that, these stories can do, they teach you how to be, right? Like when I was younger, we didn't have a lot of queer rep in TV, in my case, and comics. So, it was challenging for me figuring out who I am because I didn't necessarily tend to act like the few examples we had, which is Jack from Will and Grace and Nathan Lane and Robin Williams in The Birdcage. There's nothing wrong with those people, of course. It just didn't feel right for myself. So you learn as the examples of how to be become diversified, but also for folks from without a certain community, I think that it can help humanize. If you, by some miracle, are in a world, you live somewhere where you've never met a queer person, you've never met, take your pick of, you've probably met a woman, probably, but you maybe never met a trans person, a queer person, take your pick, right? Well, maybe you find a story that you love and that story treats them with equity and treats them with validity, and that is your example. You find a way to connect to and relate to something you think is unrelatable. And I think that is, it's not as important as the firsthand experience of being seen, but I think it's there too. And I do think that it matters. It's better, of course, to meet people in real life. But clearly that's not always happening, right? So I think if stories, if you get someone to feel for the lead, to empathize with the lead in the story, it can have a similar effect to meeting someone in real life. Not the same, of course, but I think any of those, the more you start to see the people that are different than you as people, which again seems obvious, but look at the fucking world. That's a powerful effect of this stuff as well.
That's it. He nailed it. They're both right. I wasn't for sure what these questions were exactly, but I do like representation is something that I, as a straight white man in Southern Indiana, which is all those places that Steve just said you might live in. We do have women.
I was in Indianapolis this summer, Kyle. I did not see a single one, so I'm calling that into question.
Southern Indiana. I'm in Southern Indiana. Okay. But I think representation's like so fundamentally important, because I think there is, like you said, it's life validating and there's familiarity, and frankly, we've seen enough white straight people in entertainment, so we're all over that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? What can we say? What can we say?
Oh.
So I'm going to pass it on to Whitney to ask the few questions that we have with the time that we have.
Yes, we are running out of time. I do want to kind of take stock and be like, if you have to go, except for our panelists, don't leave, please. But if you have to go, this will be recorded. So if you miss anything, it will be sent out. So I kind of want to kind of go back just a tad. So we are library workers, we're library staff. So we do want to kind of get back to books a little bit. You guys touched on it in your previous answer, but I kind of want to ask, what books have you read, either graphic novels, fiction, nonfiction, where you discovered something about yourself or who you are, or something, or a book that you highly recommend where you saw yourself reflected in some way?
I feel like this is like such a cheap answer because I read this question. I was like, I don't think I've ever read a book. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions that were like fluffy, fun nothings where I didn't feel like I grew in some way from the experience of it. Which I guess maybe isn't quite the answer, but I always feel like that's what almost all books do. That's like a good book, even something, and I do mostly comedy. I think even something that's fun, like there's that some sort of growth from it.
I would the one I had to think about this before the panel, and like Kyle, I didn't think of a great many, but actually there's one that really sticks out for me, which is I don't know if any of you have read this, Morven Caller by Alan Warner, and it was made into a film, which I think was directed by Andrea Arnold, and it was written in 1995. It's not terribly long, and it was written in Scots dialect first. And I read it more or less when it came out. I'm not quite sure why, but I did. And I had no idea. I could not understand what the protagonist was doing at all. I was like, why is she doing that? It's what she does. Basically, in quick summary, is her boyfriend, who is a successful novelist, dies, surprisingly. And he leaves behind his completed novel, and she pretends it's hers, and kind of goes on this kind of I am an author spree and stuff. And it's the whole thing is really weird. And I was like, what is this? And I think, and I've read it again and again. I've come to understand it more as I've got older. But what it taught me was really, really basic, which was some people have a completely different life to you, and they come from a completely different place, and they have a completely different voice, and sometimes other things are important to them. And this situation where this girl was in, I think, Western Scotland, in a kind of quite working class, she was quite a working class person. And this whole thing sort of, it's basically the middle class descended upon her in the role of these publishers. And I think actually this is what the book's about, is just discovering people are not you. It's like there's a whole load of other stuff, even if they're white people, whatever, they're coming from a completely different place with a completely different voice, and they're out there to find out about. So get on with it, kind of thing. It's almost entirely about that. I think it's great. I love it. It's a really good film as well. Very short though.
I'm going to give a short answer because I don't want to drag people forever, and I'm the long talker, clearly. I mean, my favorite book, but the one that I also go back to the most is The Master and Margarita, preferably the Pavir and Velikonski translation. No shade to the others, but they are inferior. And I mean, I lived in Russia and I speak Russian, so I mean, I'm going to just say on this panel that my opinion is right. But anyway, but it is, yeah, I mean, I read it when I was in Russia. I read it in college before that, and I've read it since then. And it's actually germane to this conversation. I mean, one of the key catchphrases, key like quotes from the book is "Manuscripts don't burn." It's a book. It is a book written in the height of the Soviet era about Soviet censorship and suppression. And at the same time, like much of my own work, and it sort of showed me what I want myself to be, and also what my work to be, because it is both absurdist and satirical, but also extremely relatable and extremely passionate. So if I had an answer, that's the answer. Master Margarita. Everybody go read it.
Thank you so much. I know this isn't about me, but for me, my first two books that kind of changed my life were Her Stories by Virginia Hamilton. It's like a group of fairy tales. Everyone should read it. And then Hairstyles of the Damned, which is about the early 1990s punk scene in Chicago. Also highly recommend that book. So drop your recs in the chat for anyone that's attending. So 2, maybe 3 more questions, and then we will let everyone be free. So the next question we have is, what advice would you give to our audience and future watchers of this recording who may face challenges expressing their point of view in their writing or art, And like, what advice would you give challenges that are external, like you're getting pushback from your publishers or editors or beta readers, etc.?
I'll say, like, and I only for the sake of brevity, that Steve literally what he said at the very beginning of this is the answer to that. Is you write the story that is true to the story you want to tell, and there's no reason not to stand behind that. Like, it's your story and it's the one you want to tell.
I would also say that for people who are thinking there may be pushback on their work, is obviously tell the story you're going to tell, but there's also quite a lot of support for you as well. There's look out for organizations which can back you up. In the UK, the obvious one is the Society of Authors. There will be US equivalents, and those people will get behind you. I mean, they have legal department. I mean, being a member of the Society of Authors, it's not quite a union. It's more, I think they actually might be a union. It's more a group, but they can give you legal advice. They can give you all sorts of advice. You can meet other people who are writing about the same kind of thing. There's quite a lot going on. So there is support for nearly anything. And if you want to find it, I mean, I would yeah, Google is your friend. They are out there, and people will get behind you. And even if you can't change things that other people want, which sometimes you can't, you just have to live with it, you can still be supported for yourself, which you'll probably need. Help is out there.
They both, I'm going to give a very business side answer that I hope is helpful, but I mean, because what Kyle and Allison said is the real answer. But I will say this, because you said publishers as well.
Yeah.
And an important thing to keep in mind, and look, this is going to be dry as fuck, but it's useful. Publishers are not people. Like publishers are businesses. And so it's specifically to the prompt of taking your story and trying to communicate it to publishers, hurdles with publishers. Understand that publishers are you need to speak the language, you need to speak their language. You need to go to them, and their language is money. They're in the business of making money. They're not in the business of doing what's quote unquote right or wrong. And they're often right now, due to the way the world works, not coming to the table with lived experience about what you're writing about. So what am I trying to say? I've had peers, and it doesn't matter. Don't try to hypothesize who it is, that when pushing diversified content, or any type of representation, try to come to the table with a moral pitch. It's the right thing to do. We should do it because it's right. We should do it because people need this, so on and so forth.
I'm doing something right now I can't talk about, which has an aspect that I wish I could talk about, but I was doing that. It'll bring a whole new audience to this character.
Right. So look, well, we'll put a pin in that, Kyle. So here's the thing. The minute you're speaking to someone, especially in a position of power, who is from without your community, and you come up with something like, it's the right thing to do, it should be done, the unintended implication is moral blackmail. They will feel that if they don't do it, you're telling them that they're bad, that they're wrong. And by the way, that might be true, but keep in mind, this person is your customer. You are trying to sell them a story, and they don't want to be made to feel like the villain. So, and this is all like not the sexiest talk, but I do think it's vital. And I think it's something that I wish I found out. I mean, I found out 20 years ago because my mentor was very brusque, but I wish I knew even earlier. So if you need to tell your true story, but also your job when you're trying to get it published or trying to get certain beats across the plate, you have to speak the language of the people that are approving these things. And they don't want to hear that it's morally right. They want to hear what the audience is, as Kyle just said. And they want to hear that it's going to be good business for them. And maybe that means talking about your stuff in a different way. But that is unfortunately a reality of the business. So I think it's important to know that if you are daunted by, maybe you can't find someone to approve this pitch, or maybe certain beats in your book or your work are continuously sticking points, consider how you're framing them, because we want to do things because they're right, and that's in many cases why we're doing them, but we are not pitching them to a moral creature. we're pitching them to a creature whose sole purpose in life is to make money. And that's not evil. That's just what a business is. It's not good or bad. But it's something I think that it's important to consider, because we all know that we're doing this because it's right. But the people that we're working with need to know why it's going to be successful for them. So if I had one additional thing to impart, it's phrase your pitches and suppose your things in the language of your first audience, and that is your publisher and your editorial team. And that is usually sales and monetary success.
Yeah, it's very easy to, as I was going to say, use the word alienate. I was going to say not alienate your audience. Say, for example, if you can't say, for example, women have a really hard time, therefore I'm going to make these people look a bit more powerful to kind of do something about that. It would be like, a really good example is a book that is just about to come out, which I just did a cover for this last week, which is by Tula Lote and Becky Cloonan, and it's called Somna, and it's coming out from a publisher called Distillery. And what it's about is about a woman finding her own way in puritanical times. I think it's kind of really well done, where they've turned this round, and instead of starting with a negative, like, oh, this isn't working, let's do something, like let's push back on something which could sound like it's actually pushing back on a publisher. It's actually turned the whole thing round, and it's a positive proposition, which is, this woman is breaking out of her puritanical situation, and it's all kind of sexy, and there's breasts and things, and it's great, because it works at every level for everybody. And but I was quite impressed with what they were doing, because I think they know exactly what they're doing, but they're telling this great story in such a way that it's not got any negativity on it at all. It's great. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of super easy to alienate. This is, I suspect this is why there are so few women making comics, because we just open our mouths and alienate our publishers. But
well, Allison, it's worth saying as well that, obviously what women say in the room is read differently. And by the way, like you need only look at launches where they're like, oh, the writers of Superwoman and Supergirl are the only two queer writers of the company because we couldn't find women, so we found the next best thing. It's not just that they alienate, it's that the things that they say wouldn't be alienating coming from someone that is perceived as being the same word, not that I'm breaking news, but the same words in the mouth of a straight guy would probably not be seen as alienating, because their opinion is by default thought of as valid. So listen, I mean, that's a whole other discussion, but at the end of the day, we're in the business, as you said, as Kyle said, of getting these stories published. So I think, yeah, the framing and considering those things is so vital, because at the end of the day, these stories do need to be told.
Thanks, everyone. I want to, before I ask our very last question, I want to double check, make sure there's no questions in the chat, make sure Tabrisia or Joe has any follow-up questions. Wonderful.
We're doing too good a job of saying everything. Who could have a question?
It's amazing. You've answered everything so thoroughly, and I hate to end on such a vapid question, but part of the reason why we're here, why this talk is happening, is because Comic-Con is next week. Are you attending? If you are, what are you looking forward to? Who are you partnering with? What other events are you doing? This is kind of your time to shamelessly plug yourselves if you're attending, or tabling or paneling rather than here.
I'll go
I am
first.
tabling. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
Okay, I'll zip through it. I'm tabling. I'm in Artist Alley at C34 with Caden Comic Arts. I'm on 2 panels. One of which is actually very similar to what we're talking about now, which is the Geeks Out panel about I was going to say people drawing for who they're drawing for. I can't remember the title of it, but that one is on the Friday. I'm on the Global Comics panel on Thursday, talking about comics in the UK. I'm doing 2 signings with the band Hailstorm, which is like, I know, like, look how uncool I am, and I'm doing a signing with Hailstorm. How about that? Twice. I think on Friday and Saturday. So Hailstorm are going to be at New York Comic Con, and I'm going to be there. And I can't believe it. And what else is going on? I think that's, I mean, oh my God, Hailstorm, oh my God. Actually in the room eating Jaffa cakes with me, whatever. Yeah, no, it's the whole thing is kind of really exciting. But anyway, I'm happy to meet everybody. You don't have to buy things off me because I'm flying over to meet people. It's not all about selling. It's like I just want to meet as many people as possible and chat about
It's some
stuff.
about selling. Buy something from Allison. Don't not buy something from Allison.
No, you can't buy anything from me because I can't actually sell anything.
Oh yeah, because you can't make money while you're here. I can't be.
No, I can't. Which is no, I can't do that. So,
what if they bought something in cash though?
No,
Kyle, you're being recorded.
no, I can't.
Buy the public library.
Anyway, I'm at C34 and I want to meet as many people as possible because it's costing me a fortune to come over there, and I might not be back for quite a bit.
I'm at a E30 in Artist Alley. I will be selling things. Please buy something from me. That is mostly why I'm there, is to make money and meet people. So I think I'm doing a horror panel on Friday at some point with Scott Snyder. So you guys are already probably coming. For Scott Snyder, I will also be there the same as here, trying to be a clown when people are talking very smart about serious things. Yeah. My biggest thing I'm excited about now is I'm gonna shake Steve Orlando's hand.
Oh my
Smartest
God.
guy in the room. I'm gonna hunt him. I'm gonna come over because he's at table.
Oh, dude, I was about to say I don't know what table I'm at yet because I have not gotten my schedule. So I really appreciate you tossing to me for that. But I'm with Comic Sketch Art, so you'll see a giant.
So am I.
Yeah. So, but I have not.
I think you guys are all on the right hand side, aren't you? Aren't you in a long line down, like 70 of you in a long line on the right hand alley?
Sure.
I think
I'm in E30, so it might be row E. Maybe we're sitting next to each other all weekend, Steve.
It could be.
Won't that be fun?
You'll be sick of me, I promise.
It'll be the other way. It'll be the other way. I have Rick and Morty fans coming, so.
But so it's not a joke. I've yet to get my schedule, so I do not know exactly where my table is. But I am with Comic Sketch Art, so if you find Kyle, I'll be in the same group as Kyle. And yeah, keep an eye out. I have some Marvel announcements. I have some Mad Cave announcements. I probably have ones I'm forgetting. Friday, I'm doing a panel about this book with Jose Andres. I believe it is in a truly like middle finger from the graveyard slot of like 7:45 at night on Friday, but I will certainly be there. And I'm excited to meet the people that are coming. And otherwise, come and find me. I will be signing at my own table. I'll be signing at Vault for Sainted Love. I'll be signing at Mad Cave for Exorcist Never Die. I think I have some others too, but I will post my schedule once I have it, which will probably be early next week. But I'm easy to find otherwise. And if I'm not there, I'm on social media at the Steve Orlando and very easy to find there.
Hey, can I do a weird sort of in theme pitch, like public moment for a second? All my books have adult language and violence in them my entire life. And my wife always said, she's like, hey, when are you going to make a book that my two daughters who just got home from school, when are you going to make a book that your daughters can read? And I said, well, I guess when they're 18, they'll have like a whole universe of things to read, right? But next May, I have a book called Karate Prom coming out from First Second, which is YA. It is all ages. It's teen. There's maybe one profanity in it. So it's my first book because I'm a prude. I don't let these kids read my stuff. Listen, when they're older, they can read it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But so I just want to say, like, I'm doing something that has no profanity, no violence, and it comes out next summer. Karate Prom.
I can't even do this panel without profanity.
I know you said something very, very good earlier. I was like, I don't know if we can say that.
Well,
no, we can't say that.
We'll find a way to bleep it out.
Well, you can, they can censor me out. I feel like that should just be in my rider that I'm just going to say things. So
I've been making comics, I think, professionally for 7 years. I'm doing Marvel Unleashed now, which is technically not all ages, but they wanted it to be. So it has no profanities. It's just dogs and cats. And it's like, man, what a weird year in my life. Like, it took me 7 years to write something that didn't have a curse word in it.
Little do they know there's a ton of profanity in it, but it's just like woof, asterisk, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's all growlix.
Oh my God. Well, we've reached a point, folks.
Yeah. I've ruined it.
You ruined it. I'm kidding. We the three of us and some of our friends here at NYPL and beyond, we will be at Pro Day, so which is Thursday. I'm hoping to also kind of come back over the weekend, so I will definitely stop by. The three of us will definitely stop by and say
Yay.
hello to see you all in person.
That
And
would be
Allison,
lovely.
and Allison will not be selling anything. We're just making that statement for U.S. immigration. That might be
Hi
listening.
guys. Hi guys.
We're not the
Wow.
police. The library is for everyone. We're not the police. We don't even keep your data, which is great. So with that, we do have a couple closing remarks, and I will toss it back to Tabrija, and then we will let everyone be free. But thank
Yes.
you all for hanging in there with us.
Yes, thank you. This was an amazing panel discussion. We could be here all day. Check out these are just only a couple of the books that our panelists have they have drawn or written, but we just wanted to highlight some of these because they are also perfect for the month of October, because spooky reads are one of my favorite things to highlight. Halloween season is one of my favorite holidays. But we're going to be yes, buy, I hate this place. Buy or borrow from the library. I hate this place. We do have the copies in the collection. We're going to be entering the links into the chat, so just keep an eye out for that. And then the amazing series of panel discussions we have are going to keep going on. So we are next up, we're going to be talking about superheroes. Authors and artists discuss making and delving into how their favorite heroes are coming to life. And we'll be joined by Tom King, Kyle Higgins, Andrew McLean, and Sean Lewis. So it's going to definitely be a very interesting conversation. So that is this coming Tuesday, October 10th at 3:30 p.m. So make sure to register for that. And thank you everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Kyle, Allison, and Steve. This was such an amazing conversation. I know I had fun. Everyone has fun. I hope all of our audience members have fun. Oh my God, I can't. So I need to stop reading the chat. So thank you everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. Please take the time to follow us on social media. Helen Parkway NS and 53rd Street are on Facebook and Instagram. And we have a huge exciting programs that we always like to promote. So make sure to follow us. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. And hopefully we will be able to see you at Comic-Con. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.